Hi everyone, it's Elliot from tutorialedge.net, and in this tutorial we're going to be building a very simple REST API that will allow you to store, query, update and delete books from a book table within a MongoDB database. As always, the full text version of this tutorial can be found on my website, and I'll be leaving a link to this in the description below. So for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to be using Docker in order to quickly get a MongoDB instance up and running on my local development machine. Now, the way I did that was using the docker pull and mongo command. That pulls down the latest version of Mongo from the Docker Hub image registry, and from this point I can then run my Docker image by calling docker run, specifying the name, so temp mongo, running it in detached mode and binding it to the port with the IP address specified, and then specifying the image I want to run. Now I've already got this running, so I'm going to leave it running as is. And I can see it's running by calling docker ps. As you can see, Mongo started 22 hours ago and it's been mapped to this port and this IP address. Perfect. You should note, however, if you already have a Mongo database instance set up and running, then please feel free to ignore this step and carry on using your own instance. So let's dive into the code. So this TypeScript application is going to simply expose a series of REST API endpoints that will allow us to perform basic CRUD operations on our Mongo database table. We'll be creating a table that contains a list of technical books and some attributes about these books. Let's initialize our project by calling yarn init and then calling this TypeScript Mongo version 1, and the entry point is going to be app.js. And we'll leave the rest of these fields blank. This will create the package.json, and it's within this we'll list things like the dependencies our project needs to run and the scripts we'll use to build and run said project. Now that we've done that, we're going to want to install both Express, so yarn add express, and we're also going to want to install types/express. This will then go away and install the two dependencies into our project, like so. Now, in order for our project to simultaneously build and run, we're going to want to install the Concurrently library, so yarn add concurrently. This will go away and add the dependency to our project. Now that we've got that, we'll want to specify the scripts we'll need to build and run our project. Now, for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to steal these scripts here. Come back into our package.json and simply append them into our body here and save. Now, the important parts to note are this watch command, which will concurrently run watch node and watch TypeScript. The watch TypeScript command will compile our TypeScript project and output that to a dist folder, which will then subsequently be run by our nodemon dist app.js script here. In order for our TypeScript compiler to successfully compile our code, we'll need to add the tsconfig.json file. So add this now, tsconfig.json. And I'm going to copy and paste some compiler options that will be made available in the text version of this tutorial. So now that we've done all of the boring config setup for our project, it's time to dive into the code. And the first thing you're going to want to do is create a new source directory, and within this create a new app.ts file. Now this will be the main entry point for our REST API, so let's configure this now. So import star as express from express, and then const app equals express to instantiate our app. Next we're going to want to say app.set port, and we'll specify the 3000 value here. Next we're going to want to specify a simple endpoint just to test things are up and running. Now I'm just going to use request of type any and response of type any, and this will do res.send hello world. And finally we want to start up our server, so app.listen, app.get port And within this callback, we want to do console.log app is running on HTTP localhost %d, and we want to pass in app.get port, like so. Now that we've done this, we want to preemptively build our project. So yarn run watch ts, which will go away, compile our TypeScript project into a dist folder, as you can see here. And now that we've done that, we'll now want to Control C that and do yarn run watch. This will go away and watch for any changes and automatically restart our project on localhost port 3000 every time we make a change. And if we now come into our browser and navigate to localhost 3000, you should see hello world successfully returned. Excellent. Now that we've defined the base of our project, let's go on further and define our Mongoose schema. So in order for this to work, we're going to have to install the Mongoose library. So do that now by calling yarn add mongoose. This will go away, add the package to our project, and it will automatically recompile. Now that we've got that, we want to define the book.ts file within our source directory. So book.ts, and it's within this file that we're going to specify our Mongo database connection, and we're also going to specify our book schema. Now to begin, we're going to do import star as mongoose from mongoose. Below this, we're going to want to specify a const, which will be the URI that we're going to be connecting to, which will be of type string, and this will be MongoDB as the protocol, and it will be 127.0.0.1 and maps to port 27017 and /local. Now before I forget, we're also going to have to install the types.mongoose library, and this will get rid of this error message here. Perfect. So let's specify our connection. So mongoose.connect, passing in the URI, and this will take in a callback, which will have an error of type any, and within this we want to say if error, then console.log this error and the message, else we have successfully connected. So console.log successfully connected to MongoDB, like so. Now let's go ahead and define our book schema. So export const book schema equals new mongoose dot uppercase schema. Now within this, we're going to want to define the title, which will be of type string uppercase, and we'll want to specify that this is required. So required is true, and again we'll do the same for author. This will be of type string again, and again we'll specify that it's required. Finally, we're going to want to create our mongoose model based off this schema. So const book equals mongoose.model, passing in book as the name of the model and the book schema. And so that we can access this model in other files, we're going to want to do export default book, like so. So we've got our book schema, we've got our book model. It's time to create the controller that will feature all of the functions we're going to be exposing via our REST API endpoints. Now, in order to do that, create a new directory within your source and call this controllers. Within this, we're going to create a new file called bookcontroller.ts, like so. Now, within our book controller, we're going to want to do the following. So import both request and response from Express. And we're also going to want to import this newly defined book model from our book.ts file. So let's take a step back and consider what we want our API to look like. So we're going to want to expose 5 distinct endpoints, each of which will be accessible over different HTTP verbs and different paths. The first of which will return all of the books within our Mongo database collection. The second will take in an ID and only return that specific book. The third will take a put request to /book and insert a new book into the table. The fourth uses the delete verb, which obviously deletes that specific book depending on what ID you pass in. And the final one takes a post request, which will update a book with a given ID. So let's break this up. The first thing we're going to want to create is the getBooks function. So export let all books equals rec of type request and response again of type response. This will then do the following. So let books equal book.find, and it'll take a callback. So error of type any and books again of type any. Within this, we then want to check if there's any errors. So if error, we're then going to want to send that error back. If there hasn't been an error, then we want to send the response, which will be books. Now, this should be returned in a JSON format, so we don't need to do any additional changes to this. We just need to return it as is. The second endpoint, which will be getBook, will be export let getBook equals again request of type request and response of type response. Then the function body will then want to do book.find by ID and pass in the path parameter, which is accessible over request.params.id. Within the callback, we're going to want to do the following. So error again of type error any and book again of type any. And again, we're going to do the error checking. So if error res.send error, else res.send that particular book. Perfect. So 3 more functions to go. Let's try the add book function. So export let add book equals rec request res response, and within this we're going to want to do the following. So var, actually do let book equals new book, and we're going to specify request.body and book.save, which will take in just a callback. And essentially what we want to do is if error, return the error, but if it's successful, again we'll want to send this book like so. For our delete book function, we want to do the following. So export let delete book equals again rec request res response, and for this we want to do the following. So book.delete one, which will take in a JSON object ID, which again will take in the rec.params.id, which will be inputted in our request within the path parameter ID here. Within the callback, we then want to take in error, and again, if error, res.send the error, else, and in this case, we're just going to say res.send and successfully deleted the book. Nice and simple. You can definitely change this to have a JSON response further down the line, but for now this will do. And our last endpoint, which is the post endpoint. Now for this one, again, export update book equals request type request and res of type response. And within this we want to do the following. So book.find by ID and update. This is going to take in the request.params.id once again. It's then going to take in the request.body, and third parameter is going to be a callback. So error of type any and book of type any. Now, as we have the previous four, we're going to do if error res.send error, else, and we're going to do res.send successfully updated book, and save that. Now that we have these 5 distinct functions, we need to map them to the appropriate API endpoints, and we can do that within our app.ts. So I'm going to just go ahead and delete this callback. I'm going to then do books, and I'm going to map this to import star as book controller from controllers/book controller. Within this function, I'm going to do book controller dot all books, like so. Next, I want to do book, specifying the ID as the path parameter, and book controller dot get book. Next, I'm going to want to come back in here and add book, which will be a put request. So app.put book and book controller dot add book. Next one will be the delete verb. So app.delete book, again taking an ID, and book controller dot delete book. And finally, we're going to want to do the post request, which will do the updating of the book. So update book. Save that, and when you save this, because we have just imported the book controller, you should hopefully see within our console logs that it's successfully connected to whatever Mongo database you have set up. So one final thing we'll have to do is to import the body parser library. So import star as body parser from body-parser, like so, and we'll need to do yarn add body-parser to install it to this project. Now this will let us parse any of the HTTP request bodies that we pass into this API and subsequently populate things such as the add book and update book functions here. Now that we've got this, we need to say app.use bodyparser.json, like so, and that should be us good to go. Now if we come into a HTTP REST client such as Postman here, we can actually start to hit some of these API endpoints. So let's test our first one, which was localhost 3000/books with a GET request. Now if you can remember, /books maps to the allBooks function within our book controller. And as you can see, it returns all of the books that I have already populated into my Mongo database. Next, we want to try out just the single get book. So steal this ID down here, append this to the end of your path, and then hit the send. As you can see again, it returns just the JSON object for that particular book. Now, what happens if we want to import a new book or put a new book? We'll use the put HTTP request, take off this ID, and within the body, which will be of type raw, and application/JSON, we'll want to do the following. So title is test book 1, and author will be myself, so Elliot. Hit this with a send request, and you should see that it returns the JSON object of the successfully imported book from our database. Now just to validate this, we can go back into our /books endpoint and hit the send request. And if we look at the bottom, you can see test book 1 has been successfully added. Right, next things next, we want to delete this endpoint or this book. So specify the delete verb, add the ID of the book that you wish to delete to the end of your path, and hit the send request. Excellent, we can see it's successfully deleted the book. And again, let's validate this by hitting the /books endpoint. As you can see, we're back down to 4 books. Now, last but not least, let's test our update book function. So we'll need the post HTTP verb. We'll need to again take another ID and append this to the URL. And within the JSON body, we're going to want to do the following. So author is not me, like so. And before I forget, specify this as application/JSON and send that. It's successfully updated the book. Again, one final validation. And you can see that the book with the set ID here has been set to author and not me. Perfect. Now, this has been a fairly long tutorial by my standards, and I can fully understand if you've fallen asleep by now. But bear with me, in this tutorial, we've been able to create a fully functioning CRUD-based REST API that interacts with a backend Mongo database. And we've also been able to test this using one of the most popular HTTP REST clients to validate that everything works successfully. Now, that's all we're going to cover in this tutorial. If you found it useful, then please leave a like on this video. And if you loved it, please subscribe to my channel for more programming-based content. Cheers!